Jesus rode, the grave was empty, darkness fled, the light came breaking through.
What if I told you that that piece of music was generated in about 30 seconds by artificial intelligence? There's no cello player, no ambient guitarist, just code. Does that change how you feel about it? Welcome back. You see, recently there's been a massive theological debate and uproar over the role of AI in Christian worship music. How should it operate in creative spaces? And many people are saying that it's soulless or fake or even mockery of true worship. And I get it. The idea of a robot writing a psalm, it feels dystopian. I get that. But today I want to challenge that fear. I want to make a case that AI, when used with wisdom and discernment, isn't an enemy of the church, but it actually might be one of the most powerful new tools that one can use to glorify God. And so, let's get started.
Breaking chains, burning ships, drowning in grace. This is 3 Nails X.
Church history has had a very interesting run with the way worship has worked, and especially over new technology entering into the worship space. For example, when the pipe organ was first introduced into churches centuries ago, it was very controversial. People called it a box of whistles, or the devil's bagpipes, is one way they put it. And some argued that only the unaccompanied human voice was pure enough for God, that it was just vocals, a souled individual that should be singing to God. Now, if you fast forward even later, when electric guitars and rock bands started becoming very popular, and especially in the 50s, 60s, people would say, that's the devil's music, and drums in a sanctuary? Too tribal, don't bring that in. Then next thing you know, you hit the 80s and people are bringing synthesizers into church and people are like, well, that's too fake. See, every time a tool arrives that makes music easier to create and to have, well, initially people tend to be like, this isn't spiritual. It's too worldly. But eventually we realize that tools aren't necessarily evil. It's just a tool after all. At least that's what we realized with pianos and organs and bagpipes and electric guitars. See, the question isn't, is this new? The question is, can this be used and is it sanctified? Can it be sanctified? Now, that's a big question, AI itself, and so let's tackle one of the biggest objections that I hear when it comes to AI worship. People say worship requires spirit. After all, Scripture does say that you should worship in spirit and in truth, right? In John 4:24, it says worship in spirit and in truth. But that's talking about your worship. You worship with your spirit. You worship in truth, not in any lie. And so I do think that that is a requirement, that if AI is being used for worship, it can't be in a deceptive way. It can't be a lie. It has to be known from the start. But your worship is in spirit and in truth. There's no spirit in the piano. That's just wood and strings. Or if it's electric, there's electric in it. Now, we don't worship the tool that's used, we're worshiping through the tool. If one is worshiping AI, it would be wrong automatically. Example, the grand piano. It doesn't have a soul, it doesn't have a testimony, it doesn't have any of that. It's wood, it's wire, it's ivory arranged in a certain way with math and physics. It's a machine. It's a machine. Yet when a spirit-filled believer starts to play that machine, starts to organize that machine in a way, and they pour their heart into it, and they organize it in a way, beautiful music can come out, and that wood and wire and that math and science starts to be used in a way that brings one to holy worship. AI is like a new piano. It's infinitely more complex, but it remains soulless, made of math and code. But so is the piano you're playing. It's just made of different things. It's just made differently. Now, I want to be clear on this because I just want to sit there and say that AI use in and of itself is not bad. Just because it doesn't have a soul, just like using a piano in and of itself is not bad if it leads you to worship. But one of the big objections then is not so much it as a tool, but some people have a problem with it being the source. Because when a human gets on a piano, really they're kind of the source and they are working through the tool. AI, if one uses it as a full replacement, if one uses it where the song is written about grace and the love of God, it's written 100% by AI, then, AI generated lyrics, then the melody and the voice entirely is made by AI, I think that's when theological red flags are raised. Right? How can an artist who's never experienced God's grace sing about God's grace? That becomes the problem. That, I think, is the bigger use, because not many people have a problem with AI being used in certain ways. For example, I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think people have a problem when a small church uses AI to create a bass line so that it sounds like they have a full band as one person is playing the guitar, right? If they're a small church, I think people are okay with that. I think people are even maybe okay with some Christian artists struggling with lyrics a little bit, and they use it to get out of a little bit of a funk. I think that is done as well. And I think that might be okay. But the full replacement, the lyrics, the melody, the 100%, I think that's where it gets a little bit more complex. And so, let me challenge it with a few things though. Okay? So we now have sat there and said it can be used to empower the church, especially small churches, not as a replacement, but as helping out. Right? If you're in a small church of 30 people, it can really help out the musician to use AI tools to create drum tracks, basses, right? Like they can come out with a joyful noise, all of that. It would be awesome. As well as that writer's block, it would be great. But now what about a full replacement? Now this is where I don't think using AI to create a few Christian songs, all of it, is that bad. Because at the end of the day, everything that we use is a tool. And behind AI, who created that AI? Who put in the prompt to that AI? Humans with souls created that AI. And AI looks across vast different material and organizes it in a way to create something new. It's really not creating something new. It's actually stringing together things that have already been done, like in a different way. So it's actually using lyrics and patterns that human souls have created and put online and such. So at the end of the day, it actually is using souled material. So I don't think there's any way we can sit there and say a non-souled thing has created music without a soul involved at all. But also, Scripture is clear that creation itself worships God. AI is part of creation. So why can't that worship God? Now, I want to be very clear here. I'm not sitting there saying all of our worship music should become AI. Absolutely not. Not at all. We still should have creative Christians with the Spirit of God speaking through them to create new, wonderful music. But I think sometimes the Spirit of God speaks through creation. And AI is part of creation. AI should not replace all worship. It should not. It should not be a full replacement. In fact, one of the things that I would caution when it comes to it is really, do you use it as an assistant or as an originator? And that goes for all use of AI. Do you use it as an assistant? Maybe helping you create a melody, or helping you create a prayer life, or helping you write lyrics but not do everything. Or is it the originator, right? Where you have it write literally everything for you and it do everything. I'm not a fan. Now, I don't think it's necessarily wrong. I'm not a fan of AI being the originator. I think if the AI is the originator of everything, then we really are in danger of laziness, because we shouldn't be lazy. We got to put in the hard work. And maybe even a little bit of deception. So AI, is it a good tool? 100%. But let's not let it fully replace the worship that God has put on your heart and your mind and put on your lips. But I do think sometimes other things voice what we struggle to voice. Other things give us the words that we might struggle to have the words for. That's a lot of what Psalms is. I pray the Psalms and I'll worship to Psalms, the book of Psalms in the Bible, and it will often voice things that I don't know how to voice. It'll voice pain I don't know how to voice. It'll voice joy I don't know how to voice. Sometimes AI, I think, will give us a voice that we don't necessarily know how to say, or we don't necessarily have the words. It helps give us the words to speak. At the end of the day, we're not worshiping AI, nor should we ever. But at the end of the day, if someone worships God through the tool of AI, we should just take a few minutes and step back and not discourage that. Because I think one thing that we've got to be very careful of is stealing worship from God. And if we jump to the conclusion, oh, don't worship through AI, that's bad, you can't worship that way, we might actually be taking some people who worship God through it. We might actually be stealing their worship, taking it away. So, tools change. You've got to worship in spirit and in truth. Truth always remains the same, regardless of what tool we use. And so whether it be AI music, music you create, or a clanging gong, whatever it might be, let's worship God and not worship the tool. That's what we're called to do anyway. The tool is less important than the God that we're worshiping.
Breaking chains, burning ships, drowning in grace. This is 3 Nails X.